how to start a nonprofit, a 501c3 in particular, and how to fund it. Informational workshop. My name is Michael Randolph, and I'm the CEO for the Center for Nonprofit and Community Development. We believe in taking nonprofits to the next level. Tonight's workshop is going to be both informative, comprehensive, and in-depth. So our mission is to strengthen organizations that strengthens communities. We provide an array of different services, from grant writing, business proposal, program development, government procurement, and the list goes on and on. It's like we are a one-stop shopping center. Just to get a little information about me. I've been doing this nonprofit work for over 35 years. I've been privileged to make presentations on what works in terms of community development to universities, like the picture you see here. This is the University of Florida, where I was privileged enough to share with them grant writing workshops to grad students. Also to government agencies and a whole host of other nonprofits. I've been in the business of doing what I did since 1980. I started as a community organizer. And from there, actually, I built up to what I call a community transitional changer. How to comprehensively transform poor community, or in other words, distressed community. But that's something else. I'm here today to talk about a workshop about how to get the money and how to start the organization to make the changes that you want to change. So we started in 2011 because we saw a gap in terms of nonprofits that were grassroots and were getting started, but wasn't providing the effective tools necessary to be successful. So we focus on providing that technical support in terms of effective skill sets to start up nonprofits, as well as existing nonprofits, to enhance, increase, and strengthen their capacity to service their clients. To date, we have actually provided this type of training not to 1,800 nonprofits, but actually it's over 3,500 nonprofits have received some type of training, professional training that we provide. This is just one of those training that we provide. We've also worked with getting the paperwork done to get started, nonprofits, over 300 new nonprofits in multi-states throughout the United States. So some of the states that we've expanded on this list, but some of the states in which we've actually worked with nonprofits to prepare the paperwork to get started are these 10 states, from California to Texas and beyond. In the state of Florida, we're in each of these different jurisdictions, as well as these counties and cities. So to date, we have worked with, as an individual or as an organization, and preparing over $75 million in grants throughout the course of that 35-year period of time. I might have been working on a joint grant with a group that was going for $20 million, or an individual group that was going for 10,000. The ultimate sum total is $75 million. The other thing in terms of recommendations, and I think that folks should come to the table with a background, there's somebody that gives you credit. That's why I'm asking everybody who's part of this workshop tonight to connect with me on LinkedIn. And this is the address here. You'll find that I have over 10,000 recommendations from people from around the country with different skill sets and different jobs, from blue collar jobs up to white collar jobs and all of those in between. So I'm going to be sending information out to you, but this is talking about some of my accomplishments, including being honored to be part of what was then known the White House Conference on Empowerment Zone, to get an opportunity to share my thoughts with folks from around the country. So I'm not going to focus on this. I'm only doing this to show that I do come with the credentials in order to provide the training that I provide. Let's start. 501c3, what is it? So what are your learning objectives? What should you know by the end of this presentation? And again, this is part one, 501c3, then we're gonna go into the grant. By the end of this session, you will have a basic understanding of what is a nonprofit, what are bylaws, what a purpose statement, what's a purpose statement, what are articles of incorporation, conflict of interest, solicitation requirement, 1023 application, state application, employment identification, and taking it to the next level. This is, again, an informational workshop which provides you with the information necessary to decide what are your next steps in a more informed manner. So what is a nonprofit? A nonprofit is a tax-exempt organization that serves a public interest. It could be anywhere from a charitable, scientific, a religious, educational, or even literary purpose. There are over 29 different types of nonprofit organizations that the IRS recommend. The IRS recognizes. This number might have struck over the year, but you can see that's a large number of 501c types. Our class tonight is talking about what's known as a 501c3 nonprofit. We do work with nonprofits also that want to form any type of nonprofit, but tonight's workshop is focused on 501c3. So we start off first with the question. And that question is, why does your organization exist? And more importantly, what difference do you plan to make? A purpose can be anywhere from a mother that lost her child to violence in the streets, and that death led her to the purpose of starting an organization and making sure that no other parent and no other child is lost senselessly in the streets. So the purpose becomes the reason why you do what you do. And we start off with the purpose. Now, once you've established the purpose, then you want to create what's known as your bylaws. And this is an example that I'm showing you, a template that I'm showing you that is standardized. Most people use these templates in terms of how do they do that nonprofit. Again, these are bylaws, and bylaws, when you drop the by, it's the laws for your organization. It talks about, hey, who does what and what happens if that person does what they do. It also assigns, for example, it sounds the duties of everybody, from the chairperson to the president to the secretary to regular board members. It's your code of conduct. That's what bylaws are. It tells how often you meet, and it goes on and on and on. Now let's look at some of the elements of a article of your bylaws. That includes the definition of your board of directors, any qualifications that you want to make that board members have to have, the number of your board of directors, your annual meetings, your regular meetings, your special meetings, all that is part of the bylaw. Your officers, and like president, secretary, their responsibility, whatever committees that you have, public statement, making sure that when any person makes a statement on part of the nonprofit, that person has to be authorized, be it the CEO, the lawyer, and then finally indemnification, meaning that you make sure you protect all board members by putting in an indemnification clause. Articles of incorporation. Articles of incorporation is a set of formal document that you file with any government body, in this case, the state of Florida, in order to incorporate. In order to get your 501c3 status, that only the 501c can give, your state must first give that stamp of approval. And they do this by following what's known as the Articles of Incorporation. What are some of the elements? Well, the name of your organization. How long do you plan to exist? You should put in there forever. Purpose, the public benefit, the nonprofit nature, dissolution. And dissolution is important because IRS wants you to be able to say that when you do resolve, you need to be able to have a clause in there to say you're giving that to either another nonprofit, a religion or faith-based group, or the government. But you cannot simply dissolve when you end and share that money among board members. You must give it to any of the three elements that I talk about. Now, conflict of interest. This is important because members that serve on the board of directors should not get a monetary benefit or get special value because of being part of that organization. They should do it because it's something that they truly believe in and believe that needs to be changed, and they want to be part of that change. Now, if it was a for-profit organization, you could actually charge, you would actually pay your board members. But the only member in the board of directors that's able to get funding is the CEO, and the CEO is able to get funded because the CEO/president is the person that actually runs the day-to-day operation. And boards might meet once a month. They might meet 3 times a year, or whatever. The CEO is the person that runs and oversees this day-to-day operations. And then it comes to your EIN. And your EIN is when you go online, you can go online and get your EIN. The EIN is going to be your corporate identification. When you go there, when you go to the site, IRS, it's going to first ask you to put in your social security number. Once you put in your social security number, and it's clear that you are a United States citizen, then it's going to send you to actually use the form that you complete to get your corporate tax identification. So, are there any questions at this point? Good. Let's move on. The next thing is the 501c3 corporation, the 501c3 application itself. It's known as Form 1023. Now, normally it takes, IRS is running anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. Now, I remember when IRS back when the pandemic had hit, they was running anywhere from 3 months to 6 months in order to get people a status. But if we do streamline, and that means that you make under $25,000 or under the amount that the IRS has said, that's under amount that the IRS says that you can make and only pay the fee of $275. That means that you're not going to make over a certain amount, and they give you what that certain amount is. Or you can do the more advanced 1023, which is more in depth. So depending upon how much money you got and how much money you're going to get, that depends on which of the two types of forms that you complete. Okay, let's continue. Now, once you get your certification at the federal level, then you can go in most states. Not every state that allows this, but in the state of Florida, you can go and get what's known as tax exempt at the state level. That means you are asking that you waive that you don't have to pay any service sales fees. So if you go to a store, and if we live in what we at in Hillsborough County, that's a % of every dollar that goes to sales taxes, and you wouldn't have to pay that. I don't know what the amount is currently in the state of Florida, but anyway, in your state that you're in, Maryland, New York, Chicago, but I know a lot of you are from around the country and around the world, so this might not apply. But those of you that are in the United States and are in a state, and most states do have this, it allows you to get exempt from paying sales taxes. Every state requires that you file what's known as a right to solicit donations from that state. In the state of Florida, it's called a 10-100, and it's the Department of Agricultural and Consumer Services that you have to file this document with. But it's critical that you file this document every year, or you can receive penalties for not. And those penalties could be financial penalties. So make sure that you file this right here after you are, after you come into play, you got your 501c3, then you want to actually definitely file this with the state that you're in to make sure that, see, the state has to actually give you a license to operate in the state. And that's what that license is. It's called solicitation. The only thing the IRS can do is to give you the right to be exempt from paying taxes, but only the state can say, hey, you can solicit money in my state and donations and grants, but you have to be licensed in every state. And it's called solicitation. So this is part of the other documents that we talked about earlier. You want to make sure you got all of those documents that we talked about previously, all of those in your, lined up. So you got all your ducks are lined up in a row, all lined up, so you don't have to worry about coming back. Now we're gonna go to the grants. So I'm gonna pause for a second, and I'm gonna take a few questions related to what we've gone over so far. Okay. Now, the next section is going to talk about the grant. The learning objectives by the end of this section will enable people that's taking part of this class to know the different types of grants. You should be able to describe the different types of grantors, identify the research tools available to go after the money, where the money is. After this class, you will know. You should be able to describe the fundamentals of writing a grant. You should have an understanding of the proposal writing process. You should understand what a concept paper is, letter of intent. And you should learn some new terms. And then finally, you should begin now to talk about what are your next steps in terms of going after the money. So there are a number of different types of grants, starting with what's known as unrestricted grants. And unrestricted grants are funds that can be used for general support purposes. Most grants, however, are what's known as restricted grants, and that it comes with certain attachments. And you can only use the money based on those attachments. The first type is a program or project grant. The next is what's known as a seed grant. And there's a capital grant. And then endowment grant. And then you have what's known as a challenge grant. And finally, you have what's known as in-kind support or pro bono. Again, there are different types of restricted types of money sources. Sometimes you might go for a combination. You might go for a program grant, which deal with personnel, but you also might go for a capital grant that goes with buying a building. Okay, so I want to talk about some of the sources and advantages, but unfortunately on this slide right here, it's not allowing me to show it. So I'm gonna come back to this here at some other point in the presentation. So that being the case, let me go to the next slide. Okay, this next slide is going to talk about grant research tools, the grant research tools that you can use. As I talk about where is the money. As you can see, that's a number of different types of research tools you can use. I'm pointing out the Foundation Center and Grant Glove. The Foundation Center, and there's over 115,000 foundations and corporations that give money every year. But the fact of the matter is that only 15% of those individuals that get grant, you can find them on they publish it on the web. On the other hand, the Foundation Center has a list of everybody that's given that money. So let's say, for example, you are a youth organization in Florida and you want to go for money. So at the Foundation Center, you can key in youth, because that's what the money, you want to use the money for. You can key in $100,000, because that's how much money you're looking for to get. And you can key in the location, Tampa, Florida. When you hit that button, the inquiry to come back, it's going to let you know everybody that's in the nation, if not the world, that's given in the Tampa area for youth that will give 100,000 or more, and that will give 100,000 or more. So you're doing it, as you can see, that way you can start to go down that list and start to look at the first 5, because you're never going to get it on the first one. And then you go to the next 5 and continue until you get a hit on that. But that's the Foundation Center. The other one is grants.gov. Now keep in mind, it's very complicated in using the Foundation Center. That's why we also have a workshop that teach people how to maneuver this massive bulk of information. Now the next type of grant tool that we recommend is what's known as grant.gov. The thing about grant.gov, this is where you go to find out all of the federal grants. And when you go there, you want to definitely sign in, and then you want to be added to the list. So they can send you any information on the subject matter that you want to focus on, be it youth, affordable housing, economic development, any of those resources, but make sure you limit the type of information you want. Because if you just tell them to send you information, they'll send you information on bids for nuclear weapons, for guns, the whole 9 yards. So make sure you limit what you want them to send you in terms of possible opportunities for funding. Now, here's the thing: when you're running a grant, how do you deal with it? Because grants are very competitive, very competitive. And when I say competitive, that means there's a lot of people, but not all the money in order to fund those people. So it's very competitive. Let's talk about 4 key strategies that you can use that I've learned over the years that I've been in the game, either writing grants or even looking at evaluating grants. Because I've also sat at the table and actually evaluated grants to determine whether or not people was going to get folks was going to get money. So I've sat on different types of the table. The first thing you want to do, and you can get this information from the Foundation Center, is to get the guidelines. Make sure you read the guidelines for that particular proposal, page by page to the end. Don't skip over. Next, identify who received a grant in the past. That was, who is the grantee that received that grant in the past. So let's say you're going for a grant for the Bank of America. So you go to the Foundation Center, you put in Bank of America grants awarded in 2021. And then once you identify who received the money, then you contact them and say, look, congratulations, I know you received the grant last year. We're going for the grant this year. Can you share with us anything not to do? Lessons learned. You'll be surprised at what you can get from that. Some people might not want to serve it, do that, but it don't cost you nothing to do it. The other thing you also want to do when you go to that Foundation Center, look at who was part of the group that evaluated the grant and made the recommendation to award the grants. And then contact them and ask them, what was it that you didn't like about that grant that you reviewed, and what are your lessons learned that you want to give to us? And then finally, contact the program officer. That's very important before the grant is due. And then bring your idea past that person. Every time you go for a grant, you're going to have that contact person that you can contact, and they can give you some ideas if you're in the right direction or you're not. Time is money. The problem. The first part of the grant is to identify what is the problem. And when we're talking about problem, we're talking about what is the specific condition that you want to change. In the case of the mother that lost her child in the street, the specific condition she wants to change is to make sure that no child ever lose their life in the streets to senseless violence. That's how we start off with identifying what the problem is. And it's called a problem statement or a needs assessment. And this is the different things that you should have as part of that need statement. You should have both quantitative as well as qualitative information, because you need to be able to support that the problem that you are articulating have been data driven, and that you have both hard data as well as soft data, as well as anecdotal, as well as empirical, as well as quantitative, as well as qualitative data. And all of those things interchange with each other. But you have to make an argument that there is a problem. Now, what do we mean by quantitative research? Well, quantitative research is all about the numbers. It is about the numbers and the what. So if that mother wants to know how many young kids were killed through census violence in 2021. She can Google that. And now she got the number to start with. So in the city of Tampa, 25, I'm just arbitrarily throwing that number out there, young people below the age of 18 was killed to census violence. Now, once you do that, again, the quantitative research, and you can do it and go to any source you want to in order to show the numbers. The next part is the why. Now you have to go in and type in Google, why are so many young people killing each other? Because you want to be able to say, this is what the experts are saying. Now, once you've done that, and that's called quantitative research, your next step now is to start to gather what's known as qualitative research. And qualitative research is research that is subjective. It's coming from the individual source of what is perceived that's affected by the problem. In order to get information related to the qualitative research, then one has to do focus group, do interviews, surveys, all these type of things in which you engaging people on the level in which where the problem is. For example, that mother who's trying to stop the killing, she would have a focus group and she would bring young people together and she would ask them, what are your solutions? What are we doing right and what are we doing wrong? And more importantly, what can you as young people do? Again, that's part of what we call collecting the qualitative research. Now, a couple of sources I use Fact Finders or the Census Bureau. That's a lot of good information at the Census Bureau that you can use for data, especially since the 2020 is filled with the most recent data that you can use on everything, that you can gather on everything. If you're in the state of Florida, and if it's a health issue, you can go to Florida Charts. And then if you're doing information on a community level, like you're trying to diagnose what the problem is in a particular community, you can go to city data and they will give you a breakdown as to the level of poverty, who has jobs, who doesn't have jobs, what are the health issues, you name it. It's a wealth of information that you're going to need when you start to go towards gathering that information related to quantitative research that we talked about earlier. Now, once you've identified a problem, now you have to go to what is the problem or what is the solution? And that's what we call the program or the project. Now, a couple concepts that we want to start with before we get into actually the program itself. You should understand from the beginning what is a goal. And a goal, once you've identified what the problem is, a goal is really about the final impact or outcome that you wish to bring about. At the end of the day, that's what the goal is. So for the mother that wants to deal with the issue of a child being killed in the street, her goal would be to reduce the level of violence among young people. Once you identify what the goal is, your next step is to identify the objective. The objectives are the objective is how do you plan to bring about the end products? How do you plan to do that? The objectives should be specific, immediate, measurable, practical, logical, and you should be able to evaluate it. Because in evaluating, you have to show what success looked like. So they call it SMART objectives. In the case of the mother whose goal is to reduce the violence, one of the objectives might be to create a mentor project. Another objective might be to create an after-school program, to create a tutoring program. As you can see, the list goes on and on and on. Now, You want to also begin to talk about and identify the different types of objectives, from the behavioral, the performance, the process, and the product type of objective. Now let's got to go. You understand your objective. Now let's go to creating the proposal. This is what we call the method section. Some people call it the work plan, and other people call it the program design. This section describes your project activities in details, indicating how every objective that you talked about earlier will be accomplished. It also includes the following, and I'm not going to read everything. It's going to include a description of facilities, equipment, materials, a description of personnel, staff, a description of how you engage the target population and formalizing the activities that you're bringing about, down to a description of what will occur from when the project begins until it ends. What that means? That you need to break down the chronological area. For example, the first 30 days, we plan to bring on staff. The next 30 days, we plan to do outreach. And then the next 15 days, we plan to actually start to provide the service. Because keep in mind, you have to lease the building, you have to get equipment, you have to get letter here, you have to do all that stuff. So you have to chronologically talk about how does that happen from beginning to opening up the door for your service. Introduction. See, the introduction is a credibility statement that describes your professional or organizational qualification. And it establishes the significance of your idea. Most time in the government proposals, they don't really use this so much as private corporations do. You need to be able to make an argument as to what's unique about your nonprofit, why you think you can do it when others are not doing it, and how, more importantly, you plan to solve the problem. And then finally, we reach the conclusion. Every proposal should have a concluding paragraph or two. This is a good place to call attention to the future after the grant is completed. Also, if appropriate, you should outline some of the follow-up activities that might be undertaken to begin to prepare activities for your funding for the next grant. In every part of the grant, with the exception of this particular part of the grant, you can't get emotional. In this part of the grant, if you were a mother that lost that child, the last paragraph will be, I don't do this because I'm trying to get rich. I do this because of a pain that's so deep in my spirit that it has literally killed me and put me in a dark place. And this is my way of getting back to a better place, in a light place, by making sure no other parent and no other child has to endure what I endure. Okay, next section. Now we come to the how you want to dissimulation. I could get that word out with nothing. Anyway, keep moving on. You want to understand, as people give you money, you better recognize them. So what that mean? Your newsletters, your websites, your pamphlets, your press release, your speeches, anytime you do anything, any type of media that you should have on there, funded by, donated by, to recognize those individuals. So while there's over 15,000 foundations and corporations that's out there, they give, but in giving, they want you to show them, they want you to show their contribution they gave to your organization for public relationship reasons. So that's why it's so important that you always list everybody that past and future funders for your organization. Our funders look at that also when they're trying to take a chance on you, especially if you're a new organization. Okay, appendix. Well, the appendix, that's the end. This is when you begin to put in any articles about your organization. Let me strongly suggest that you try to have at least one news article a month about what you're doing. And if you can't do one news article a month, do one Facebook or LinkedIn or any type of social media event once a month. Because the funders, when they start to fund, they're going to look back and look at your track history. If you're new and you're just getting started, you want to emphasize what you can do with nothing. The other thing you want to make sure is that you have a list of the board of directors and the officers' titles, your most recent annual report, your organizational physical report.
I'm reminding you.
Past success stories, and letters of support. Appearance. Yeah. Appearance is very important. You can lose your ability to get that grant. And you know, when you're writing a grant, most time it takes you 4 to 6 weeks. You can lose it because you failed to follow appearance and you failed to follow the guidelines. What that means? If I ask you, when you submit your proposal to me, to number the pages and you don't, you got a problem. If I ask you to double space the proposal that you submit and you don't, you got a problem. If I tell you only submit written and not pictures, and you do that anyway to show you, and I don't ask you to, you're gonna lose it. Pay attention and do what they say. If I ask you finally to submit in Time Roman, and you submit in cursive, we got a problem. So appearance is important, and following directions is also important. Okay, we made it to this session. You talked a good talk. Now the funders want to show, how do you plan to prove it? What does success look like? And how do you get to success? Because you made an argument of what you want to do it. Now let's talk about how you're going to prove it. That's called evaluation. How do you map your success? So there are different types of evaluations, more than we have here. But there's 3 I'm going to be talking about tonight. One is going to be called a goal-based evaluation. And a goal-based evaluation makes sure that your organization is following the goals of the organization when you're delivering your programs. The other type of evaluation is known as a process-based evaluation. How did you do it? Give us the blueprint on how you actually did it. And then the final one is what's known as a outcome-based evaluation. In this evaluation, you're shown what is the outcome, how many people was helped, how many people were served, and in doing that, what happened as a result of that? What was the benefit to the particular individual? Okay, let's continue on. Now we talked about earlier, the first type was the goal and objective evaluation. You must make sure that your process and your activities and your outcomes are consistent with your goals and your objectives. For example, if your objective and goal is to provide support services to female teenagers between the ages of 18 to 41, I'm just throwing it out there, but yet your process and your activity is focused on services for senior citizens. See, the goal and objective does not match. So make sure your goal and objective, your activities, and your outcome. Logic model. We talked about the second type of evaluation is outcome-based. That is, how do we know what you're doing and what does it look like and who's being helped? It's called an outcome-based evaluation. And the model here is called a logic model. Okay, good. When we're talking about a logic model, we're talking about the what, the how, the who, the why. We're talking about the evidence, the where, and the when. So as you can see, we have to address all of these issues in an outcome-based evaluation. Okay, let's continue to the final type of evaluation known as a theory of change, or in other words, a process evaluation. So the theory of change is a process of evaluation because it shows how the person got to the point to where they got to. Like most other logic model, as well as the goal and objective evaluation, we talk about the problem and we talk about the outcome. What's unique about the theory of change is that we talk about the process. We talk about the how much and how often something is done. So in this case, they identify the problem as children are reading below the grade of third grade. So they talked about their evaluation and process. What are they going to do? Well, they're going to individualize children 3 times a week. They're going to do 3 times a week, and they're going to do it 20 times per session. And they're going to focus on building blocks, literary skills through reading, writing, and wording. So they tell you the process to which, how often, when, and what they plan to do. And then they give the outcome. After this intervention, what happens? That students are able to read at the third grade level. Remember the problem? They couldn't read. So the outcome, now they can. How did you do it? It's called the process in terms of a theory of change. Now we come to the organization. Are you ready to go for a grant? Some of the things you have to ask yourself related to the grant in terms of your organizational capacity. This goes to the why, the who, the what, the how, and the how much. What does your organization, why does your organization exist? Who are you? What program activities do you have? How do you implement your program? And how much does it cost for your programs? Now, as you mature as a nonprofit, you should have policies and procedures, staffing, financial sustainability, fiscal control, talk about how you're going to control the money. You should be able to talk about access to support services, and you should be able to do a SWOT analysis. We'll talk about that later. Now, as you mature as an organization, you should have a 5-year strategic plan. A strategic plan is different than a business plan. A strategic plan talks about the internal operation of the organization. To make sure you're constantly making sure that your organization is being strong and strengthened and strengthened. That's what this 5-year plan in terms of the strategic plan. A business plan, on the other hand, looks at the financial well-being of the organization in terms of how are you bringing in your money. So what are the elements of a strategic plan? The elements includes goals, strategies, objectives, tactics, operations and methods, and the budget. Remember we talked earlier about a SWOT analysis. By the way, only all of the top 100 Fortune 100 corporations do this analysis. And very suddenly you see a nonprofit that does it. But always a nonprofit, you have to think like a business instead of a nonprofit. So in your second or third year, you want to put together what's known as a SWOT analysis. You want to be able to identify what are your strengths? That is, what are you doing well? You want to identify your weaknesses, like what is it that you can do to improve? You want to identify what are the opportunities that are available to you. And you definitely want to identify what trends can hurt you. And you also want to know what's going on with your competitors out there. And are you keeping competitive? Now, the other components of a strong organization include understanding what are your values. That is, what do we believe? That's your long term. Our mission. Hey, how are we planning to get there? That's part of your long term and your medium objective. Your vision. And your vision, you're talking about where are we going? Again, that's medium. Our strategy. Your strategy is, well, how will you get there? That's more focused on short term. And finally, the tactics. What will you do to get there? And that's focused on short term. Every organization, as you begin to grow, should have the following elements: a business plan, an operational plan, a financial management plan. You better show that you understand how to make sure money is accountable, fundraising, safety and risk management, marketing and branding. You have to be able to market and branding your organization. And you have to have those skill sets to do that. Partnerships and collaborative. You need to be able to show that what you got is so valuable that other people want to partnership with you to do things with you. And that's done through partnerships and collaboratives. Funding. Now the question is the money. You have to be able to show to the funder that what you plan to do to keep the program operating after the current grant that you're going for runs out. Here's a strategy. I call it social entrepreneurship. This is a phrase that I'm taking. That's the definition that's been given to social entrepreneurship. It's the ability to fund the future of nonprofits through a combination. I want you to listen to this. A combination of earned income, social contributions, and public sector subsidies. Now, the earned income is used to pursue social objectives by simultaneously seeking both financial and social return on investment. And what are the different parts? Well, part one is the resource or the revenue? How do you bring in the money? Anywhere from grants, fee for services, development fee, consultant fees, own and operate your own business. And yes, nonprofits should own and operate your own business. We'll talk about that if you check out in-depth class. And other things is using like investment in stocks and bonds, and using that as a source of money that you're investing in the stock money. So that's another source of money that's constantly coming back to the organization. And then you're talking about your program and projects. That's the output. From the money that's coming in, how's it being used? And it can be anywhere to fund your employment program, public safety, community building, whatever program that you're trying to get funded. Now, from the output, now you have to talk about what are the outcomes. Now, we talked about the input, the output. Now we talk about the outcome. In this case, they're saying it's going to increase in employment, increase in affordable housing, reduction of crime, and improve quality of life. It also, after you identify that outcomes, what are the benefits? The benefits are higher return on investment. That is, there's a greater tax base for the city, reduction in city services, notices. This is somebody that's writing a grant to do comprehensive program to really rebuild the neighborhood. And they say that one way we do this is by increasing the tax base, by bringing investors, reducing crime. And this is how they begin to talk about what are the benefits of their programs. Your programs might be different, but you always want to talk about the benefits. Now, the budget. Now, a budget is more than just a statement of the proposed expenditures. It is an ultimate way of expressing your workshop. There are different types of costs involved. You got your direct, your indirect, your cost sharing, and your in-kind. Direct cost normally goes towards your staff. It goes towards wages, consultant fees, fringe benefits, etc. Indirect normally goes towards your administrative overhead costs. That could be the monies that you need for a legal, accountant. These are indirect costs, administrative costs that keep the organization operational. So I'm hoping everybody has really gotten a perspective and got some good information from this workshop. This is our in-depth class related to grant writing, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks, 15 lessons. Our deliverables for this class is to A, teach you how to write a grant, and B, teach you how to make a side hustle. Because once you learn how to write a grant, you can write a grant not only for your organization, but you also can learn how to bring additional money, especially during this time of economic crisis in our country. So I hope everybody has benefited from this class. I'll be sending you information on the other component, that is the 501c3 preparation. I'll give you the fees and service that we charge to work with you to start that 501c3 in terms of paper, document. But know that once we start, and once you start with us, we take you not only from actually starting on paper with the appropriate legal paper, but also take you all the way down, all the way up to operation. So we take you from necessary documents to file, to start your nonprofit, to moving to operation. So again, thank you for attending the workshop. We have when we give this workshop, we give the workshop from people that not only is found around the world, but around the country. I'm talking about we've gotten so far in our workshop, over 42 states that are taking part in one of these workshops. And that's only part of it. We have been able to get folks from Africa, Middle East, and Latin America to take part in the Netherlands, Canada. I can go on and on to take part in these workshops. I hope it has been of a service. Please, if you want to get in contact with me, you can contact me at the Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com. That's Center for Nonprofit and Community at gmail.com. Thank you very much. And I hope this has been of some benefit to each of you tonight. Thanks again. Appreciate you.